Joe Rogan recently revealed how having Mark Zuckerberg on the podcast caused issues and even provoked the FBI to release an official statement about their involvement with Facebook. Something that's obviously insane and just goes to show how big his show has become. Curious as to what the FBI's involvement was? Let's dive in. Wait, Joe Rogan had Mark Zuckerberg on his podcast? That's right, Joe Rogan featured Mark Zuckerberg on his podcast, number 1863, a popular show that gained much traction on the internet due to the fact that it was one of the first podcasts to be released actually featuring someone as big as Mark Zuckerberg. The conversation was mostly about the business of Facebook and how it works, but they also touched on some more controversial topics such as censorship. Although much of the conversation was internet-worthy and didn't attract much federal government attention, there was one particular moment that caused some serious issues. This, of course, was something that led to the FBI getting involved and Rogan speaking out on this matter, something that usually doesn't happen too often for the popular podcast host. Joe Rogan has been in the middle of several key controversies over the years and has usually found a way to come out unscathed, but this particular situation was different. Although usually the host seemed unbothered by the controversy surrounding his show, this time he was a little more on edge and even revealed how this whole thing caused some issues for him and his show. Okay, what was the controversy about? The controversy started when Joe Rogan and Mark Zuckerberg were talking about censorship on Facebook. More specifically, the New York Post's report of Hunter Biden's lost laptop. For those who don't know, the New York Post is a newspaper that's been critical of the Biden family in the past and has been known to release some bombshells that put them in a bad light. So when they reported on Hunter Biden's laptop and emails that were found on it, it was only a matter of time before Facebook got involved. Now, many people were outraged by this because they felt like Facebook was censoring the story and not letting people see it, something that Mark Zuckerberg confirmed when he was on Joe Rogan's show. However, what many people don't know is that the FBI actually reached out to Facebook to make them aware of the story and that they thought it might be political misinformation. After the episode went live, the FBI released a statement saying that they only warned social media companies about foreign threat indicators and not about a specific news article that might be released. Although the statement from the FBI was pretty vague, it was still enough to cause some serious problems for Joe Rogan, his show, and Mark Zuckerberg. Think about it this way. This was one of the first times that a government agency had actually acknowledged that they were involved with a particular podcast episode, at least in some manner, something that's absolutely insane and just goes to show how big Joe Rogan's show has become. What did Joe Rogan have to say about all of this? Joe even went on to speak about this on his show, something that he usually doesn't do. Although initially, Rogan didn't speak on this topic, he was convinced to do so while talking to the comedian Tom Segura, something that's pretty interesting in itself. The conversation was prompted when Segura brought up the Zuckerberg episode and asked if the two of them discussed Facebook's stance on banning content, something that's been a hot topic as of late. Rogan explained that they did talk about censorship and that Zuckerberg confirmed that they did limit the sharing of that piece in some way, but he didn't seem keen to go into detail about how that is done. He said it without revealing too much about what their whole system is or about how they shadow ban things, he claimed. In this conversation, Joe Rogan went on to say that having Mark Zuckerberg even provoked the FBI to release an official statement about their involvement with Facebook. As we all know, the FBI is a government agency that's usually pretty tight-lipped when it comes to its involvement with social media companies, so it was pretty interesting to see them actually release a statement like this. Rogan made it clear that it was still an eye-opening moment in terms of how big his show's reach has become. Despite the fact that the statement from the FBI wasn't directed toward Rogan specifically, it just goes to show that Rogan isn't just some podcaster, he's a major player in the entertainment industry and has a ton of clout. Imagine being able to provoke a response out of the FBI themselves, one of the biggest three-letter agencies in the world. That's pretty impressive, to say the least, and it just goes to show how popular Rogan and his show have become. Has Rogan commented on this since then? Rogan has not spoken out on this matter since then, and it's unclear whether or not the two of them talked about it on their show. However, one thing is clear. Despite the fact that Joe Rogan usually isn't too bothered by controversies and issues, this one clearly had an impact on him and the show. Though most likely he couldn't speak out on this if he wanted to, it's a pretty impressive podcast appearance, and definitely one of the top shows Rogan has managed to produce. What other crazy show stories have happened on the JRE podcast? There have been some pretty major stories that have come out of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, and this isn't the first time it's featured someone as big as Mark Zuckerberg. Nevertheless, if you're wondering what other crazy show stories have happened on the JRE podcast, There are plenty of notable famous people who have appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, and each left their own unique impact on the show and internet culture as a whole. One of the best examples of this was Elon Musk, who appeared on the podcast back in September 2020. This was one of the most controversial shows that Joe Rogan has ever done because Elon Musk took to smoking weed on the show, something that's pretty big news considering how high profile he is and how strict his position at Tesla is. Nevertheless, Musk appeared on the show and later revealed that he had taken a hit of weed while on the show, something that's pretty insane considering how many people were watching. This prompted a lot of backlash from stockholders in Tesla, as well as board members who were not happy with his decision to appear on the show and smoke weed. Despite all of this, Musk didn't seem too bothered by the controversy, and he even referred to it as during the earnings call with Tesla investors. This was a pretty big moment in JRE history, something that's definitely worth noting if you're a fan of Joe Rogan and his show. Not only did it create some headlines, but it also cemented Joe Rogan's place as a powerful podcaster and someone who has the ability to really make things happen in the entertainment industry. Did any other crazy things happen on the JRE show that threatened the show itself? Another interesting moment was when Alex Jones appeared on the show several years back. For those who don't know, Alex Jones is a controversial figure who has been banned from platforms such as Facebook and Twitter. He was recently sued over $1 billion by the families of Sandy Hook, something that he previously claimed was all a hoax. Nevertheless, Jones appeared on Joe Rogan's show, and the two of them talked about several topics, such as the Sandy Hook conspiracy theory, 9/11, and even the government itself. This is an iconic moment in JRE history because it was one of the first times that someone as controversial as Jones had appeared on the show, and almost caused the entire show to be canceled. What's in the future for the Joe Rogan Experience? Although there's not really any clear direction of where Joe Rogan's show is going, one thing is clear: with the addition of big names such as Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, it's only a matter of time before we see more controversy and headlines coming out of the JRE podcast. Will we see more government agencies get involved? It's hard to say. Nevertheless, if Joe Rogan can keep producing quality content and providing a platform for people to speak their minds, there's no doubt that his show will continue to be one of the most popular podcasts on the internet. This is undoubtedly true, seeing as how the show has already cemented its place in history as one of the most popular and controversial podcasts of all time. When a show is capable of inviting the richest man on earth to come to sit down for an appearance, or the literal owner of Facebook, and actually capable of getting these guys to show up, it's safe to say that there's definitely something special about the Joe Rogan Experience. So what's the takeaway? Well, Joe Rogan was definitely impacted by the whole Mark Zuckerberg controversy, even if he didn't want to show it. Nevertheless, this just goes to show how big of an influence Rogan has become and how popular his show has become. Despite the fact that there's still some controversy surrounding the relationship between Facebook and the FBI, there's no doubt that Joe Rogan's show played a major role in this whole thing and helped to shed some light on what's really going on. This is a crazy ordeal, but let us know what your thoughts about this are in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.